Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon. Where do we
Afternoon.
stand right now? As of whatever the time is, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 3rd of Jan, where do we stand?
So where we stand is the strikes are on. We've got correspondence from Network Rail today inviting us to make some suggestions to them on how they want to proceed, which we'll duly take up. We've got no offers of any meetings this week. We may well have offers to meet with the employer next week, which of course we'll take up. And we'll continue to try and reach a settlement that's fair for the travelling public, fair for the taxpayer, and most importantly, fair for our members.
OK, you won't need me to remind you what Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary, said. He said there is a very fair pay offer on the table, which has been accepted by 2 of the trade unions on Network Rail. The RMT recommended that their members didn't accept it, but actually a third of their members still voted in favour of it. I think, says Mark Harper, it is time the RMT got off the picket line and around the negotiating table to try and hammer out a deal with the train operating companies and Network Rail. It is a fair and reasonable offer on the table. Obviously, that's what he thinks. What do you think? What's your response to that, Eddie?
Well, we're more than happy to get round the table, but we'll have to have an invitation for us to come and sit here in order to do that. So the offer that was rejected by Unite and the TSSA is a different offer to the one that was put to our members. So they got the pay award, a clean pay award, if you like. For our members in the RMT, it's not a straightforward pay award. It's a pay award associated with acceptance of a whole raft of job cuts and changes to our working practices, changes to the unsocial hours that we currently work and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit more for RMT members, and that's why our members democratically voted to reject the offer.
So I'm wondering about the third of members who voted instead to accept the offer. Why is their perspective different, do you think? I mean, obviously, you're the kind of representative that is in close touch with all different swathes and cohorts in your membership, so you will know why the offer was acceptable to a third of your members. What did they say was acceptable to them, but 2/3 don't find acceptable?
Well, it's different because it depends on what job you do in the railway. So some of those people may have been doing jobs in Network Rail where they're not so affected by the changes that the company are demanding, and other people are. So a third of people voted in favour, but two-thirds of people voted to reject it. And in a democratic vote, you have to go with the majority, obviously. So we put the offer to our members and they've rejected it now. So that offer's gone. And what we need is an improved position that can get the support of the majority of workers in Network Rail.
Explain the position of your members when strikes take place. What happens about being paid? How many days of full pay have they now foregone? Are many of them in proper financial peril or real difficulty because they've just been right through, as we all know, the highly expensive, isn't it, festive season where everybody thinks they've spent too much and no one's got enough money to cover it. So how many days short on pay are your members so far?
It's really, really tough. So we've been in dispute now for a significant period of time. We're in a current, quite an intense phase of industrial action. So they've lost somewhere in the region of more than 2 weeks take-home pay at this point in time, and they're going to lose more money over the strike days that we're undertaking over the next few days. And no one takes this lightly. I've been speaking to people who've been selling things this Christmas to try and make ends meet. It's been an extremely tough time for people out there, but our members are resolved and they're determined to get a fair settlement. You've got to appreciate these are workers who haven't had a pay rise now for 3 years, and they're being asked to put up with a load of changes that are detrimental to their health and to their family lives. So they're being asked to work a lot of unsocial hours on top of the unsocial hours they already work. And I've had people say to me, look, I just can't do this. I'm going to fall ill. I won't be able to do it. And it probably put my marriage, some people have said to me, under strain because I won't be able to see my family. So these are real issues. It's not just about the money for us.
I mean, I'm looking at the front page of the Times newspaper today. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, Eddie, or not, but I can show you the front page. Here it is. And the headline that goes along here says the following: millions will shun trains forever. Now, I can translate that Times headline. It's a little concise. And what they mean is, if your train's cancelled often enough, if you can't get to work often enough, if you're thwarted by the trains being cancelled, in the end, people will find another way. Either they'll work from home, they'll strike up a different way of flexible working, they'll buy a bicycle, they'll carpool with friends, you know, they'll buy a horse, a mule, I don't know, they'll do something, a tractor. They won't go by train. They will lose a taste for it. And of course, lots of people got out of the habit during COVID anyway. So I think what they're saying here on the front page of the Times is, you better watch out, because if lots of people are thinking of creative ways of not taking the train, you won't have jobs to negotiate about, will you?
Well, I think it's a really dangerous prospect, because what we're seeing now is a rail industry that's in real trouble. And, you know, some of your viewers may disagree, but I have to tell you, our members are absolutely passionate about the railway, and they feel that they're not just sticking up for themselves and their families, but they're also standing up for the rail industry, because the government has cut billions out of the operational expenditure of rail. They're managing the decline of the rail industry as we speak, and we've seen the disruption and the poor service that's being delivered when we're not on strike. So they can't run a railway when we're not on strike, never mind when we are. And I think that, you know, the travelling public have been ripped off for more than 30 years now. It's coming up to in rail. We've got the highest fares in Western Europe. There's profits coming out of the industry and going abroad, and the services are failing. What we need is real investment. You know, if we're going to have a green future in the country and a sustainable economy, we need a strong transport system, and that requires investment, and that requires looking after the people that are meant to deliver the railway, and that's what we're asking for.
Let me read you this question. It's been sent in from Andy. I just wonder what your answer is. He says, question for Eddie. I thought most rail routes had been privatised, cross-country, Arriva, etc. So why are the unions dealing with the government rather than the individual rail company employers?
That's a really good question from Andy. And if you look at the public rail contracts that are being tendered for the different services out there, although they're run by private companies who take huge amounts of money out in terms of profits, all of the industrial side the industrial relations side, if you like, is directed by the DfT. If we write a letter to one of these train operating companies, they've got to write to the DfT and let them know what we've said within 3 days. They can't make any offers to us on pay. They're not free to negotiate with us as private companies, which they are. And so that's why we find ourselves in this situation. It's the government who's cut the funding to the railway. It's the government who's demanded that they have all of these workplace reforms. And it's the government who decides whether or not they've got the ability to make an offer that can settle these trade disputes. And that's why we find ourselves in the situation we're in.
Do you feel as if progress is being made? We are told, weren't we, that a solution is within reach, within grasp. It's kind of there. However, you don't see it that way. It doesn't seem to you to satisfy at all any of your requirements. So has progress been made? All these days of inconvenience and difficulty and people not being able to do the things they need to do, has it so far, has it rendered any kind of result for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the thing that people don't want the general public to know, and that is strike action actually works. So when we went into this dispute, we were being offered 2% plus an additional 1% over the years of this deal, and thousands upon thousands of jobs to be taken out and a whole range of changes to working practices. We've now had 2 offers that have improved each time and some changes to some of the things that the companies are demanding of us. And that's only come about because we've stood up for ourselves and taken strike action. So we have seen improvement, but just not quite enough yet in order to satisfy our members. So if we get an improved offer, we'll put it to our people, we'll take a view of it, we'll put it to our members, and then they'll decide whether or not they're prepared to support it and accept the settlement.
Do you think the Prime Minister should get involved personally? Do you think that would help or hinder this?
I think the Prime Minister is involved. If you go back to his time when he was in number 11, he was very keen to make sure that any pay rises that were offered were also associated with a whole range of changes to working practices, or workplace reforms, as he called it. So that's the formula he set down. And he was obviously in number 11 when the government decided to strip all of these billions of expenditure out of the railway. So he's been involved from the start, and he's made a lot of very hairy statements, and he's talking about taking away workers' rights and their ability to strike in order to pursue a pay rise. I mean, this is a sort of rhetoric we see in countries around the world with repressive regimes. So he is directly involved, and he's the Prime Minister of the country. even though he's never gone to the people and faced a general election in that capacity. So he should really change tack. The government's policy at this point in time is to keep wages down, but to let profits and let prices go through the roof. And we think that's got to change. We've got to take profits down a peg or two and give ordinary working people out there a lift, because that's what they need.
Eddie, thank you very much indeed for joining.